Back in 2007, Roberto Luongo dragged the Vancouver Canucks to the playoffs. There's a joke going around at the time, picture of the Vancouver Canucks playoff roster, and it was an empty bench with Luongo at the end. 2008, he sputtered down the stretch. The Canucks missed the playoffs. I started hearing a lot of grumbling about how Luongo wasn't good enough, even though in 2007 his playoff stats were off the charts, fantastic. But because he looked kind of bad on the last goal of the year scored by Anaheim, in a series the Canucks were vastly overmatched in, I started hearing about how he sucked. He couldn't get us past Anaheim, and then we missed the playoffs because he sucked down the stretch. 2009, the Blackhawks tore him apart. He sucks. 2010, the Blackhawks tore him apart. He sucks. But there's one thing that remains consistent. He's not allowed to have a bad game because the team in front of him can't score. The 2007 Vancouver Canucks had an anemic offense. Jan Bulis was one of their top 6. Jan Bulis is in the top 10 players that I dislike the most in the NHL. Ever. It didn't matter if he scored goals. People would say, well, he got 20 goals. I'm like, I don't care. He's useless. I don't care. He is completely useless. I look at Florida right now, and I look at what happened last night, and for the second game in a row, the Florida Panthers lose in double overtime. And somewhere, someone is throwing their arms in the air going, see, that's Lou. Tavares comes in to take a shot, Lou's on this side of the net, and then the wraparound goes in because Lou's useless. Doesn't matter that he made about 50 saves. Doesn't matter that his goals against and save percentage in the playoffs were fantastic. Doesn't matter that Jágr can't put the puck in the ocean when it's the playoffs. And as a Bruins fan, I remember. It was frustrating watching Jágr play. I think we had 23 playoff games, and Jágr scored nothing. He had 11 assists. I'll give him credit where credit's due. And he's big. You know, it takes 2 guys to check him off the puck. But he has lost a step. And he lost a step about 5 years ago. Everybody talks about how many points he scored and goals he scored and everything. And that's nice. But there are plenty of players who would have probably had more goals or points than him. They just retired while they were still somewhat in their prime. A guy like Joe Sakic comes to mind. Now, Sakic had injuries too, so the injuries played a part. But when a guy retires while he's still good, like a Patrick Roy retired while he was still at the top of his game, it's different than when a guy just hangs on. Jágr was the number 1 scorer for Florida this year, which tells me that Florida's got a problem. And Florida's young forwards were not as good as Islanders. The Islanders had a lot going for them. Yes, you could have called a penalty before that goal by Tavares in the last minute, blah, blah, blah. Fine. But there's no guarantee Florida wins Game 7 because they can't score. Because if Florida could score, and Panthers players have admitted this, they would have had more than 2 goals in 8 periods of hockey. And it's Vancouver all over again for Luongo. He can't have a bad game. He can't allow a bad goal, or it's over. And I feel bad for Lou, because he's a good goaltender. And I've seen a lot of people posting a lot of shit for years. It's almost a decade now. I've seen a lot of people posting a lot about Lou's overrated, he's overpaid, he's over this, he's over that. His cap hit's $4.5 million. He's not that. He's a good goaltender. He played a lot for Florida this year, and he looked great in the games I saw. He had 1 bad game in this series. 1. But Florida can't score, so it doesn't matter. Now, Chicago tonight. This is St. Louis's last chance. Now, the Capitals pulled it out yesterday, and credit where credit is due. They got down in the muck and they played a Philly game, and they beat Philly playing their own game. But Washington had better be careful, because if they play that way against Pittsburgh, they're gone. Pittsburgh is not screwing around. Pittsburgh is really scary right now, and I'm thinking Pittsburgh and Tampa. because I don't think the Islanders have enough to beat Tampa. I think Tampa has better goaltending than Florida. No offense to Luongo, I know I just talked to him, but Ben Bishop is insane. Bishop is so consistent, and he's in his prime, and he is likely, if Tampa goes all the way this year, instead of being a runner-up, I could see him being the Conn Smythe winner, because Tampa's forwards, all of them are good scorers, and there's not really going to be, in all likelihood, a number one standout guy. And on the blue line, you have Hedman, and you have some good defense, but I think Bishop's going to be the guy that if they win the Cup, they say that without Bishop, we don't do it. So Conn Smythe could be in his future. And then, of course, out west as well, we have Nashville is going to go down to Anaheim in 6 tonight. So I will be wrong about Nashville. I have no doubt Anaheim's going to take them out. Nashville won the first 2 games. They gutted those out. But since then, Anaheim has just wore them down. And Rene's had some cracks in his game. Nashville's confidence has dropped. You can see it in their play. And so if I were putting money down, and I don't because I lose automatically if there's money involved. It's a curse I get from my dad. As soon as my dad put a bet down on something, that meant the team was going to lose. But I would think Chicago and Anaheim tonight. I really do. I really have a hard time seeing, and maybe St. Louis does it, but to me, if they couldn't hold that 3-1 lead, and Chicago scored 5 in a row, that to me looks like some Vancouver stuff right there. When the Canucks had the Hawks down and they had their foot on their throat, and then they let up. And that's not a team you can do that with. You cannot do that with Chicago. The Blackhawks will make you pay. And it's going to be an interesting next round if it's Chicago and Dallas, Anaheim, San Jose, Pittsburgh, Washington, and the Islanders and Tampa. I mean, those 8 teams, it's going to be fun. Now, potentially Nashville wins tonight and then has to go to Anaheim for Game 7. I don't like Nashville's odds no matter what happens tonight. Even if they win like 5-0 tonight, I still think Anaheim beats them in 7. If it gets driven to 7, then I like San Jose's chances in the next round because they're going to have some time to rest and heal up a little bit before Anaheim comes in. But this is a fun time of year, and my heart goes out to Luongo because he is still riddled with the same problem he had in Vancouver, which is the team in front of him just they can't score. And that entire overtime, the Islanders dominated, and just the flow of play. And I know puck possession numbers, they're like, oh, the puck possession numbers favor Florida. The flow of play favored the Islanders the entire overtime. And you can debate refereeing all you want. The best way to overcome bad refereeing is scoring goals. And Florida couldn't do it at all. Riley Smith was the #1 scorer. I love Riley Smith. He's played for both my Bruins and my Stars, and I think he's a good player. And I don't understand why he gets traded around the way he does. But if he's your #1 scorer, you probably aren't going anywhere in the playoffs. So it's too bad. It's too bad because a Florida-Tampa series would have been fun. And seeing Florida do something in the playoffs would have been fun. And then what's funny to me is that I gotta mention this. Right away, I see comments. Oh, Bettman had to have a New York team in the Stanley Cup, so of course the referees, the fix was in. Or Bettman has refused to move the Florida Panthers while the team's losing a lot of money and they're not getting any fans. Cities in Canada like Quebec, Winnipeg at the time back then, Hamilton, were screaming for a team. Kansas City's got a stadium. All they need is an owner. There's other cities that would welcome an NHL team in a heartbeat. Bettman and NHL owners have fought to keep a team in Florida. If any team was going to have the fix in with referees, it would be Florida. The NHL has nursed that team in Miami for years. And they need that team to go on a nice long playoff run, cut a nice profit, and then they can go, see, hockey works in Florida. We got Tampa, we got Florida, and both teams are doing really well. And then Bettman can pat himself on the back. The Islanders aren't losing money this year like they did last year. They've got a new stadium, which isn't any good, and they're going to have to move again anyways. And the Islanders are at the bottom of the list in terms of NHL prospects and projects because the Islanders are not Bettman's team. Bettman protects his Sunshine States. He protects his Southern State teams, the Nashvilles, the Phoenix, Florida. These three teams have been protected by Bettman. If the NHL was going to fix the series, Florida would be going to round 2, not the Islanders. Absolutely not. The fact the Islanders moved out of Nassau and moved into a basketball stadium in Brooklyn is proof the NHL is not sold on the idea of staying in New York long term. Because the Barclays Center is not a place for hockey. You've got a fucking car sitting behind the net. A car. Cars for sale or giveaways or raffles, that shit happens in Europe. Every time I see that, I think, are we in Geneva? Is this Sweden? What the fuck is there a car behind the net for? It's very distracting. Now, if the NHL wants to put somebody behind the wheel of that car and let them drive the car for, say, one shift. So one shift, Tavares gets the car. And then to make things fair, the next shift, Kucherov gets the car. So the Islanders in Tampa can distribute the car amongst themselves. And that could be fun. That could be a fun hockey game. People who say, oh, I don't watch hockey anymore, it's boring. There's a guy driving a car. He's actually run 3 guys over already. I think you need to watch this. It would be fantastic. But it is very distracting having a car behind the net. I can't even watch it. I can't. Because every time they show it on the screen, I'm like, oh, there's that car again. It's mind-blowing to me. Because those are prime seats in any other arena. Any other arena, those are seats that are $200, $300, $400. Playoff game, there would be $800. And there's dozens of seats that would be there. So that's revenue the Islanders aren't making. At all. That Florida and Miami can make if they make the second, third round of the playoffs. So again, the NHL did not fix that game last night. The referees decided to put their whistles away and just let them get away with whatever they wanted to do, and that happens in the playoffs. Should it? No. Rules should be rules. You don't see the strike zone changing. The strike zone changes depending on the pitcher. I've watched enough games to know that certain pitchers get certain calls that other pitchers don't. But you don't see the strike zone widened by this much because World Series, guys, I don't care if he throws it into the fucking dugout. You better go get that ball because it's going to be a strike. And wouldn't that be entertaining if no matter where that pitcher throws the ball, it's a strike? So you got a guy running with the bat, fucking swinging. Come on. Basketball, close enough to the net it counts. What do you mean it was an air ball? Yeah, but he looked good when he threw. Look at him. He's sad. I don't want him to be sad. Those points count. And if you keep it up, you're getting a technical. You're lucky I'm not counting technical fouls tonight. That's why 2 other referees have been knocked out. And we've allowed it. The fans are happy. It's weird that in hockey and in no other sport. But then again, it's the loser point thing. See, this is an NHL mentality. This is a Canadian mentality. Well, they're tied after 60 minutes. I'd be ashamed to see them go home without a point. They've tried so hard. Well, yeah, he tripped that guy, but man, this game is so important. He should be allowed to trip that guy because he really, really wants to win. I think it'd be a shame to call a penalty there. I think that'd be a real shame. So we'll just go ahead. I didn't see anything. I didn't see it. And again, it's a Canadian thing. Maybe they got him go, sorry. Noted. He apologized. It's fine. It's fine. Coach is calling over, yelling at you. Hey, he apologized. Now you need to apologize. Maybe you need to rethink your strategy, okay? Because he has a heart. And he understands that I have a hard job out here. And he apologized to me. And that means something. Maybe it doesn't mean something to you in your corporate world with your suits and your bench standing shit. But to me, it means something. So, hockey's a weird sport that way. I am done for today.